thank you for watching this video. It's an experiment, so don't get too mad if the pre-visuals don't exactly match the finished film, as so to speak. But I want to thank Abhi because this is kind of his idea to kind of have something. I was going to say down on paper, but this isn't paper. But something to that lets us sort of grist things out and grind things out in a little bit more of a looser fashion than we're allowed in 280 characters. So I welcome you, Abhi, to our video call.
Adam, thank you for having me. And I want to say, regardless of what happens with the dining districts and all this sort of thing, man, I'm glad we're having this chat.
Oh, me too. Yeah, it's nice to see faces whenever possible, even if it's through video calls.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I as the host, I will yield to you with opening arguments, and I know you are in the midst of collecting data as you do and mapping that out. So why don't you start wherever you like. It's I'll let you have I'll let you as the prosecution open first.
Oh man, I didn't realize it was going to be. Oh boy, what I thought would be interesting is let's set the stage maybe, right? And talk about what it is we're talking about. So the downtown dining district. Did you want to give us an intro? And I can take it from there. Like, what are we talking about?
Okay,
What the whole thing is, yeah.
Yeah, you can tell that the pre-production meetings went swimmingly. So last summer, people will remember there was I think it's fair to call it an experiment, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
They closed off the intersection at McDonald and Wyndham, and several different establishments were allowed to expand out into the roadway. It wasn't a full, you couldn't literally sit in the middle of the road because they still had to create access for emergency vehicles. So people will probably remember if they went downtown, will remember what it looked like. And so it still had that emergency access, but basically that corner was shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Coming into 2021, this was a few weeks ago at Committee of the Whole, which is for people who may not be well versed in the mechanisms of council. Staff brings stuff to committee, and theoretically, committee is where everything is hashed out, all questions are answered, all requests for further information are given, and then at the end of the month, the recommendation that committee passes comes back for final recommendation at the last city council meeting of the month.
So the committee is roughly the place where they kind of hash out the gory details.
Mm-hmm.
It's a place for deliberation, right? So they can discuss and come up with things, and then they I guess they make I don't know the exact terminology, but what they decide at the meeting is then ratified, like officially at the council meeting. Is that roughly how it goes?
That's more or less accurate. If not entirely accurate, just depending on how you want to phrase things. But so that's where we are right now. We're in the middle of things. At the committee meeting, council approved which was the original recommendation of staff, which is option number 1, which is that traffic will still be allowed to flow through that intersection. However, and I think this is part of it that's missing, is that lanes all around downtown, not just at that intersection, but traffic lanes all around downtown will be closed so that all manner of businesses can expand out, whether that's creating a patio for dining, whether that's creating, I guess, a sidewalk shop or a pop-up shop or something, just it's fairly open for those businesses to use the space as they wish. Of course, one of the other options presented to committee was to initiate a program very similar to what was happened last year, which was to close down that intersection. And then the third option, which was, shall we say, slightly more popular than a full seasonal closure, was to close it on weekends. However, I think it's also important to note that it will be a setup very similar to last year, where there will still have to be, I think the difference is, and maybe you can correct me if I'm imagining things wrong, but I imagine it's going to be the same whether or not that intersection is closed or whether it is open to through traffic, because there were two lanes open on either side for emergency vehicles to pass through.
Gotcha.
So I think what is being considered, the setup will look the same, but it'll be a close to traffic or not close to traffic. And that's where we stand on the debate.
Right. So the three options are, option one is businesses can request, lane closures on an ad hoc basis for special events.
That's right too. Yeah.
Yeah, special events, and then some businesses can open out onto the patio, so additional sidewalks and maybe even parking spaces, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But the lane closures are on kind of an ad hoc basis, on a request and our special events basis. The second option is we do the repeat of what we did last year through I guess the summer months between the Labor Day to Remembrance Day, I forget exactly. So the summer months.
Yeah.
And option three would be.
I think you're thinking about Victoria Day too.
Victoria Day, sorry, that's right. Yeah, makes more sense. And then option three would be similar to option two, except just on the weekends.
Right.
So that's where we are. City staff recommended option one, but it seemed like there was a lot of support for option three, with some support for option two, which is just we do the same thing as we did last year. So I thought it'll be interesting for us to try something new, which is I'll try to make the case that I think you're making, and then you try to see if you can make the case that you think I am making.
All right, this should be interesting.
It should be interesting, right? Because I think maybe it might even be that we are talking about the same thing. But if we get our wires crossed, because like you said, 280 characters is just not a good way to communicate. Because I watched your delegation and I've read the stuff that you've written. So to me, it sounded like you were saying that the way we did it last year, we has some challenges, and those challenges are borne significantly on, for example, transit users. Someone who works 8 hours a day, there's only one place you can make a connection if you're transferring from, well, maybe the university too, but the hub, downtown transit hub, is very close to where this downtown dining district is. I mean, last year, maybe it was different because of COVID and transit users, but now as we come back, and this plan is for the next 3 years. So if we did the same thing as we did last year, then we will repeat the same problems that we had with transit users and so on. So are we doing enough to consider the experiences of transit users and so on? And then you may not be in favor of option two, which is we'll do roughly the same thing as we did last year, except with the addition of city staff says they can account for, in order for people to not miss bus connections and stuff like that, they're asking for, I think, $380,000 or something. So to invest in transit so they can reroute buses and so on. So the design will be the same, but my understanding is staff are saying that, if city council allows for the budget, then they can reroute buses so that people won't miss their transit and so on. So your preference would be for option three, because it's a weekend. The lanes will be closed on the weekends. The city is asking for $182,000 roughly to most of which, I think $150,000 of that is going to transit to make sure that people don't miss their connections. And weekends is less of a risk, for any missed connections and stuff. So we don't know what this is going to look like. I mean, city staff are saying that, they need that extra money to budget for, moving bus schedules and stuff around, routes around, so people don't miss connections. Let's experiment with what this looks like on the weekends. Let's see what that looks like. And then over the next year or maybe next 3 years, we will learn more. And then using that experience, we can then go about thinking about, okay, how can we make all of downtown more pedestrianized, more car-free, whatever that may be. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that's an 8 out of 10.
I'll take it. Better grades than I got in school, I'll tell you that.
Aren't you a PhD now?
Yeah, they don't care about grades once you
Oh,
start a PhD.
okay. Well, now we're through the looking glass. I just want to say I'm drinking fruit juice because it's pretty dry up here on Snake Mountain. Anyway, so you can correct me if I get anything wrong about where you, and I think probably the mayor and a lot of proprietors are coming from downtown, which is to basically nothing is too good to try and promote downtown businesses, which is, this is a bold experiment. There are going to be hiccups. That is to be expected when you're experimenting boldly. And at the end of the day, the idea is, and this is borne out in the secondary plan for downtown. At the end of the day, the idea is to go car free downtown regardless. So this is like a big, bright, bold step. And I know from the data you gathered last year, this was not like a downtown phenomenon, in that it wasn't just people downtown. There were literally people who took time and effort and energy to take a couple of minutes and fill out your map and your survey. And it was people from all over town.
Yep.
And so if the idea is to attract people to local businesses, to bring them downtown, to get them out of their house, to participate in the local economy, and to do so safely, this program, at the very least, the metrics of your map was a grand success. So why mess with success? Let's try it again. Let's think outside the box. Let's be bold. And there will be hiccups. But when we're talking grand societal change, and I think this is a grand societal change, trying to get people to leave their cars at home, there's going to be hiccups because change isn't easy. How did I do?
Close. So there's three parts in there that I'll address, I think. So
All right.
The first thing is, honestly, what I said about what you said is also what I genuinely believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I am extremely proud of what our council did last year, doing this experiment under the emergency situation. We were one of the first cities to go out there and do this. Everyone else was just talking about it. Urbanists, I'm not an urbanist. There's people who call themselves urbanists and policy wonks. You've said this before. Guelph is a town with probably the highest number of per capita policy wonks. People talk about stuff, but we actually went out and did it. And I'm extremely thankful and proud of the council collectively for making the decision. If I remember correctly, I think it might almost have been a unanimous decision to do this.
I think so.
And that was great. So the map I started last year began when they were thinking about extending the deadline for when it was supposed to close.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that time, staff had recommended, if I'm remembering correctly, in September, to say we should not extend this by another month till November. So my delegation at that time was to support that the way we have it now, we should keep it going. And my insight was at that time, a lot of the narrative was around this was only people in and around downtown, or maybe just college students going there. But I wanted to show that people from every ward, especially because councillors might relate better to people who see them and see people from their ward going,
right,
and give people an opportunity to speak about this in a less intrusive way than delegating a council, which might be complicated for a lot of people. So I went to downtown. Funnily enough, I've only been to the downtown dining district 2 times, I think, or maybe 3 times. Only one of which was for a social occasion. And my buddy, turned 40, big milestone. Okay. The other 2 times was for like research, note taking. So I went and I sat down. I looked at like who was coming in, what people were doing. Were they just coming to downtown and then just leaving, or were they walking around? That sort of stuff. I turned the map and the insights into a council delegation. I told them we need to extend this, and I believe they did extend it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was good. Although at that time, I don't think it was unanimous, but there was enough to get that going. This time, so after that happened, after I delegated at council, I was invited by the staff to be on part of the stakeholder committee to investigate how we might want to bring this back better. So I provided input to the stakeholder committee, and at the committee, they showed us some data that they had collected from folks that I had spoken to and stuff like that. And they put that in a report. That report went to council. So at the stakeholder committee, like I and a couple of other folks who were on the committee brought up the same issues that like we're talking about now. So transit, accessibility, and things like that. And those were, we spent some time talking about those issues and how we might address them better. So staff took our input. I'm a transit user. I've been car free until COVID started, when we needed it to get around to my job and my wife's work, because we changed employment because of COVID. But ever since I moved to Canada, I've been taking transit and walking around. So that issue is very directly speaks to me, and just from equity perspectives and stuff, it's important to me. So when the report came back from staff to council, my own like before I went into the stakeholder committee, my own preference was, let's do this because it worked. The objective is to bring people to downtown. I don't care where you put it. Like, that's for staff and council to figure out. I want to get people to downtown. I mean, supporting businesses and stuff is fantastic and great, but for me, what really spoke through is that people were saying, "Oh, I'm so proud of my city. I've lived in my city for 20 years. Like, I've brought my family out there, 4 or 5 times." So these are things that really speak to me personally. I like to think of like home as a habit, right? And belonging as a practice. You can get better at belonging to places. And the more opportunity we give people to go visit and to spend more time in their city, I think it helps nurture the sense of belonging and social cohesion and stuff that is so difficult to get right. In a sense, it's just technical issues about how do you build better buildings and stuff is quote unquote easier than this like intangible social stuff, or how do you make people feel like they belong in a place or feel proud of their city. So that what spoke to me. And so I went into the stakeholder committee wanting to articulate that. But then when I read the experiences of people, transit users, and when I saw that, I reflected in the stakeholder committee. I said, if we are going to do this again, we need to make sure that we make provisions and allocate enough resources so that these problems are addressed.
Right.
So when the report came back to council, I saw option 1, which to me seemed like a step back from where we were, what we did last time, because businesses said they need a long window of opportunity before they invest in getting things like heaters or getting things like, seats and stuff like that. So this ad hoc basis where you have one business, maybe one business requests it for 1 week, and then that's not enough time to even get people interested or for them to invest in it. So option 1 wasn't appealing to me. Option 2 was personally appealing to me, because staff said, we can do what we did last time, but we can address transit concerns by, investing $380,000 in rerouting buses 4 or 5 days a week. But I recognize that, like we live in a, plurality of views and opinions, and I would love option 2, but I would very happily settle for option 3. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I think I'm there with you. I think the thing about option 1 is, I think it is the best option that nobody really likes. It's just, if you, in a world with 3 options, where I think a lot of people are like, at least when you're looking at the council vote, and when, 10 out of 3 are like, definitely not number 2. And then it's like 5 out of 8, we'll take number 3. And then if you're trying to get to a majority and you've already eliminated 2 options and you agree that you have to do something, you're left with the last option. And I think if there is something we can all agree on, is that there has to be a better option than number 1. Because one of the things I will say is that I was probably one of those people who was in favor of like, you know what, it's almost hard to forget just how because COVID has kind of become routine, and we're recording this on like literally the first anniversary of the pandemic declaration. It's become routine. And so when you think back to last summer, it was like, well, we're still trying to figure it out. We're still trying to figure out masks and physical distance. Is it okay to eat outside? And so just like doing anything seemed like a great idea. And I think that's where I was too. And I think where the rubber meets the road almost literally is that in practice, I think everybody was eager to like kind of put this into effect. And then in practice, we started seeing where the real troubles were, and transit is big among them. One of the things I'll say is that the fact that staff in their planning have built into like hundreds of thousands of dollars into mitigation efforts it's a tacit acknowledgement that it doesn't work for transit. Shutting down that intersection doesn't work for transit because we have to put on extra buses. We have to shut off certain stops. And so the fact that in the budget you are accounting for that already says, we know this doesn't work for transit, but we're going to keep going with it anyway.
See, I will disagree with you there.
Okay.
Because to me, what that says is that we know that if we did the same thing last year, it wouldn't work for transit. But by investing $182,000, we will make it work for transit. And that's the distinction, right? So
I just meant this, it doesn't work for the system as the way it was designed. And at this point, I'm gonna try sharing my screen so that we can take a look at downtown, because I think, and I've seen a lot of people mention this, perhaps in passing because they're not used to taking transit. Like, well, we can just reroute it around the dining district, and it's like, well, yeah, you can, because that's basically what they did last year, is they rerouted around. So this is the intersection we're talking about, and every bus, except for 2 bus routes, passes through that intersection at some time during its run. So when we go down here to where the buses depart, this is Guelph Central Station right here, there are 2 ways to go. Well, I guess more than 2 ways, but there are only so many. Well, actually, no, there is. Okay, I'm going to use my bus, my neighborhood bus as an example. So number 10 departs from here.
Yeah. And
it goes down, out, up McDonald, turns at Wyndham, goes down Wyndham to Quebec, and takes off. So when this intersection is shut down, it has to reroute. So how does it do that? Well, again, I hop on the number 10 here, comes out onto McDonald, goes down, turns back into the station because it's one way. It goes around, comes out on Carden, then comes out on Carden, down Wyndham, to Fountain. Now we're going down Fountain to Gordon, and now we're going up Gordon, up Norfolk, up Norfolk, up Norfolk, to Paisley, and we're continuing on our way. And so that's the most elegant, and again, that was one of the most elegant, and I said this at my delegation, the most elegant sort of rerouting. But in that, you were adding about 6 extra turns. I actually counted the streetlights. It's almost the same number of streetlights, but it is, it is so much. It adds so much extra time to get around that, and it's the same thing with here we are. So the number 99 northbound too. The number 99 parks right behind the number 10. So for people who know and ride the bus, it departs Guelph Central Station, goes up McDonald, through Wyndham to Norfolk, and then goes up Norfolk, and so you're seeing all these stops along the way too, right? So right here behind the old Mercury building, right here across from the library, and there's some doctor's offices here. Wyndham House is somewhere along here, and then Hakeem Optical, and there's another bus stop around, right there at London Road. Now, when that intersection is shut down, it departs the Guelph Central Station. The name literally slipped my mind for a minute. Goes down McDonald the other way to Woolwich, and then goes up Woolwich, up Woolwich,
And turns left.
and turns onto and to continue on its way, and then it misses all these stops in between.
Yeah.
Now, life would be easier if we went back in time and said to John Galt, hey, in 100 years there'll be this thing called traffic, and your whimsical layout. I mean, because this is the thing, the layout of downtown is literally designed to work without traffic. It's because it was designed in 1827, so it is meant to be traffic
visionary. This John Galt,
a true visionary,
knew that we'd arrive at car-free downtowns like 200 years after. Yeah,
exactly. So so going back in time 200 years and saying like, well, we need kind of a grid so it's easier to detour when traffic comes along.
Yeah.
Or go back to the 1970s and say to Mayor Norm Cherry and the council at the time, like, hey, I know an Eaton Center sounds like a really great idea now, but in 20 years, but it's just the downtown is not designed to reroute stuff. So I guess when I hear staff recommend we're going to add buses and we're that's fine, but because that's always kind of been constantly solution, and that's a solution that transit uses right now, and I'm sure you've seen them too when you're out and about. That the 20 adds an extra bus when all the shops and all the manufacturers let out at shift change at 7 and 3 o'clock in the morning.
My wife takes the 20.
Right. So she knows if you're taking the bus at 7 or 3 p.m. It's jammed and they need that extra load. And so I mean, even in that, the basic like year zero design of transit is faulty, because you've created a system where you have one bus serving this industrial area, and 90% of the time it works, I guess, fine. But then there's 2 times a day where it's so messed up you need the extra bus. And so it just, I get my thinking is, and I'll let you talk in a minute, but it's just the core idea here is that the system as it is right now is broke. And so we're going to break it a little more, but that's okay, because we're going to slap a Band-Aid on it, or we're going to put a cast on it. The leg is still broke. You can still move around, but I guess it's a matter of, do we want to have a system where the leg is broken, or do we just want to go around without a broken leg?
Okay. So let me address a couple of things there. So I think most people you ask, will say, I guess for obvious reasons, that you'd rather have a leg that's not broke, right? And the city, through its plan of developing these processes and plans, has a way of unbreaking the leg, or putting back a stronger cast, or giving you a bionic leg, if that what or whatever that So, but moving away from that analogy, I guess where I'm going with this is that when staff say that if you invest X number of dollars, so for the weekend it's $180,000, for option 2 is $380,000, for $340,000 or $40,000, whatever. We learned a lot from how we did it the last time. We did the rerouting in a kind of an ad hoc way. We kind of tried to make it work. We kind of put a Band-Aid on it. We heard back from people. People said it didn't work. Many times people missed connections. But this time around, that's why we're asking for this budget. If you give us this budget, buses will be on time. People won't miss their buses. They'll have to do 11 routes. So it's not just one route going around a budget. They have to rearrange it in a certain way, that 11 routes, so that for transit users, my understanding is it will be business as usual, in the sense that you will miss, maybe you'll have to take, you won't miss your connections. So when staff say that, I trust them, and I trust them to deliver. Now, in the past, we've had many, I'll say, some issues with introducing new routes. I remember, 41 was it, that went just up and down, downtown to the university.
Mm-hmm.
And it was after I moved here. I think 99 was introduced afterwards. And the initial days when that happened, there were a lot of misconnections. I think, in fact, if I remember correctly, I think one of the first times you and I met in person was when we both missed 99 and we took the 99 from university. You were out of your radio shift and I was,
Yeah.
going to downtown.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know there are challenges,
Mm-hmm.
but over time, I have found that they've addressed those challenges. And yes, there was backlash initially, but they've managed to fix the challenge. So when staff now say, invest money and we will fix this problem that we had last summer, I am inclined to trust them and give them enough time so they can experiment and figure out what these routes are. And if we did this for 3 years, I think we will know enough about what this looks like that when whatever that ends up looking like in 3 years from now, what the vision is for downtown, whether it's pedestrianized or car free or whatever the overlap of those two may be, we'll have enough data to say, okay, this is how we unbreak the leg, or this is how we fix transit in a way that it doesn't. So my question to you would be, are you not entertained? No. Are you not, or what? So do you hear staff saying that, and do you feel like that would address the concerns that you were raising about the routes and stuff, if they had to redesign 11 different routes so that people would still be guaranteed to make their connections, make their stops, make everything work?
I'm not suggesting that we redesign the route, because I think at the end of the day, we want to make transit as simple and as easy to use as possible. And I don't think okay, it's summer, this is the new route, and then in winter we have a separate route because that intersection is open. That seems overly elaborate and complicated to me, and that's because that does not help the cause of making transit system simple. I'm going to answer your question about trusting staff with a story. I used to record a radio show first thing in the morning on a Sunday, and so I would get up and go and get the first bus of the day, which is 9:15, and at least once a month it wouldn't come, and I would call transit and I would complain. But then inevitably, once a month, that first bus would never come. And what happened was that someone doesn't show up for work or because they're sick or something. But there comes a point where you're like, well, doesn't it make sense? And I realize you have to pay for that person's time. But if something happens with such alarming frequency that once a month, somebody doesn't show up for work and the first bus of the day doesn't leave, which then puts at least a dozen people out of inconvenience. They're trying to get to work or church or the radio station or whatever. And Councillor Guller made this point at the minis. He said something to the effect of he didn't hear any complaints about transit last summer, and my immediate reaction was of course he didn't, because transit users know you complain, your complaints go in a box somewhere where somebody nails them shut, puts it on a gurney, and wheels it into a deep, dark warehouse where there are thousands of other boxes that no one will ever look at ever again. And I am referring to the end of Lost Ark. So, but it's just there's that feel. There's a lack of trust, right?
Yeah.
And I would love to take the word for it that outside of extenuating circumstances like a train derailment or something, the system will work this summer with extra buses. I just can't get there because of past experience. And I have been here longer than you, so I've had more time to get more bitter and jaded about transit.
Fair enough.
But it's just I can't take them on faith that they have learned the lessons to make it work when you can't even learn the fundamental lessons that there is inevitably going to be one person who doesn't show up on a Sunday mornings. And because here's the thing is, we stopped recording that show on Sunday morning, And so I didn't have to get up early on Sunday morning, like for a couple of years. And then I had a job where I had to get up to work a early Sunday shift. And I think I said to one of my sisters or my mom, I said, like, watch me go out and the bus doesn't come. Like, this is the first time I've taken this early bus for the first time in years. But I have a feeling it's not. And you know what? It didn't come.
No way, really, eh?
No, it didn't come.
Yeah.
I had to walk.
It's a jinx it.
Well, this is the thing. It's like, isn't the jinx like, I am absolutely positive it's going to come this one time. It was like a reverse jinx. It was, so that's where I'm coming from. And to put this back on a positive track, one of the things I will say about closing on the weekends is you start taking away the pressures on the system, right? When school gets out, is a big one. When the factories are in and out, because a lot of factories do run on weekends, but they don't necessarily run at the same capacity. People still have weekends off, their jobs, so people are going to work, but not as many.
Right, and the weekend routes are different, anyways, right, compared to the weekdays.
Well, the service is running on a Saturday schedule all the time, or on a
right now.
Yeah, so it's
right.
So I mean, there's no like changes to the schedule in that regard, but it does take, like, I don't see a lot of freight trains moving through town on Saturday and Sunday either. So there's those pressures off. So it's maybe a bit easier to make the runs on the weekend than it is with the additional time pressures of a lot of people going to and from school, the freight trains, the workers, and plus, I went, because I'm out in the middle of the day running errands, we'd go past the dining district and it would be empty, or there'd be two people. So it's like, why are we having the street closed down in the middle of Tuesday?
I remember there was a period of time when I think it wasn't fully open and you could drive through.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when we were doing the birthday parades, a couple of times we drove through downtown, just waving at people. People really like that kind of thing, seeing people dressed up in costumes driving through downtown. So there were times, I mean, obviously, so what I'm hearing from you is that given past evidence of, how transit has not worked sometimes, for you and other people, I've been on the receiving end of that too. When staff now say that, it's money, if you give us this money,
right,
you'd be able to, fix this around, chances are some people will fall through the cracks.
I think I don't know what, let me phrase it this way. I don't know what will happen. Yeah. I just know that when we start getting creative with the system that has troubles working, the vast majority of the time, it doesn't work out how people would expect. I have no doubt about the intentions of staff. I think they've come up with a good plan and a way to compensate for the inconveniences.
Yeah. My
concern is that they don't know the transit system as well as the people who use it every day.
Okay. So if we were to, if what we are trying to do here is to do a complete redesign of like the downtown, right? I think the concerns that you and I are raising now will be more pronounced because now you're drawing a line in the sand and saying, and you're charting the destiny of what transit will be or what the downtown's footprint will be and car traffic will be for the next 15, 20, 30 years, God knows how long.
Right.
But we eventually, see, where I am looking at this is in 2023, with the secondary master plan and all of these things the city has, through that process, which will be a long, more elaborate engagement process, we will have to come up with a new way of rethinking how we do transit, pedestrian, and car traffic downtown.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
It's just, I think you're looking at it as a stepping stone to the long term. I'm looking at a wall being put up in the short term. And I think maybe that's where where the divide, if there is a divide, is you are thinking 2023. I'm thinking this coming May.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you, actually.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about coming May too, honestly. But where my head is at is that in 2023, when we do this process, do we actually know what works and what doesn't work? Because my worry is that we will find ourselves in 2023 at the same spot that you have identified now, which where you're saying in part that staff might think they have a great solution, but they don't have the experience of transit users. They don't have the experience of doing this sort of rerouting thing around downtown. So rather than find ourselves in the same place 3 years from now, does it not make sense for us to experiment with what that experience looks like in the next 3 years on the weekends, right? So I think you and I,
yeah.
So like, hand to heart, like if I had to go delegate to council, tomorrow, I'd say option 3. What would you say?
Oh, I have already delegated to option 3.
And you said option 3. Okay, so let's start from there, right? So option 3, we have a common ground there in option 3. And I am in support of option 3, not because I think we should do downtown at any cost, or like I'm not a proponent of like, oh, this is a big and bold change, and therefore bold change comes with some costs, and I don't really care about that. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm very, very focused on the costs and how they bear upon different people.
Right.
But these costs will come, the magnitude of the costs and the people that are affected will be the same. When we come back in 2023, we will still be having the same discussion. We will not have anything to show for how we tried to solve for that problem, because we will still be like you identified. I feel like we will still be applying, technocratic. You're a transit expert, and so this is how your planning expertise tells you how to do. But that may or may not match the real life experience of people like you, people like me. So in 2023, we will still be in in square one, but not square one, the bus stop.
Yeah.
But whereas if we have the opportunity over the next 3 years to actually test a bunch of different things at a lower risk than doing it all through the week, let's do it on the weekends. Let's see what works and what doesn't work. Let's keep continuously hearing from what people are saying about what this works, and then let's keep muddling through and iterating as we go along, right? I think that will get us to a better place in May.
Yeah.
I think that will get us to a better place in 2023. And to go back to something that you said earlier about, like maybe like the mayor or some other people on council being proponents for option 2 and stuff like that. Like, I don't want to speak for the mayor. I honestly don't know, because he's not told me, right? What he thinks. But what I read from what he said is that ever since this thing has come up, all I've heard him be is vocally in favor of option 3. And is saying, let's do weekend first. I understand why we don't want to do 7 days or, every day. But a good compromise solution would be to do the weekends, invest in transit, see what we learn, and keep iterating and move forward. So it sounds like to me that, like the stars, the planets have aligned, and you and I and Mayor and 4 other people on council are in favor of option 3. And I think that, and so that's where I'm at.
I agree. Nothing would make me happier that if the proposed solutions for dealing with transit work out. I would love that.
Same.
Okay, I thought you were going to, but no. What I was going to add it to is that I'm for experimentation as well, and I think if I'm not a scientist, but I think that we had one experiment last summer where we just shut it down for months. And we got valuable data from that. But we've done that experiment. So let's try a different experiment. What happens if we shut it down for the weekends? And we just take the pressure off the weekdays, maybe, because at the end of the day, there will still be one weekday, Friday, where transit will have to deal with all the usual pressures. So now that we understand the issues with transit, can we account for them in a way that will make the process a bit easier? Can the functioning, all the issues with this, because there are also changes to the footprint of the dining district too for delivery people and all that. Can we run this experiment and get similar results, like transit's still a gong show, or do we get different results, like transit functions okay, people like it better, the footprint works for delivery people, and then I guess it's a matter of then what is the direction then going forward? So
100%, man. Like look at us. You and I are like roughly the same page, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing too to remember, for me at least, is that the data that we got from last year is I don't know what do you say, diluted by the fact that it was COVID, the beginning of COVID, right? We don't know if people were, so last summer, in terms of like the kind of businesses that were closing, where everyone was at, this summer is going to be different from last summer. More people are going to be vaccinated. We understand better about masking. We understand better about social distancing and stuff. The summer after this is going to be even different from this summer.
Yeah.
Most of us, would be probably vaccinated, and, case counts and everything would be going down. And every year from now, I think we will be building up closer and closer and closer to what an average summer in downtown would be, given our growth trajectory and that sort of stuff.
Right.
So if we just held on to the data that we got last year and we just let the next 3 years wash away, we would have nothing to show for when we come to 2023. And when you and I will go to delegate saying transit is broken, we need to fix transit, we will have nothing to show them about what works and what doesn't work. I'm not an urbanist. I'm not a transit expert. I'm not an urban expert, right? I'm just a guy who loves this town and just wants to participate and just tell people what I like, what I've heard, and say this is what I care about. And I think that in doing so, all we're doing is putting a thing forward and saying, hey, this is what I care about. You, staff and council, you figure out how to get me to where I care about. So when you go to council and say, I care about transit and I want transit to be a priority, I will say, yes, brother, go for it. If someone says, I want accessibility to be a priority, I said, yes. I'll say, yes, of course, accessibility to be a priority. Go to council and talk about it. The challenge I think we're having is that even though it seems, you and mine are Venn diagram is 99%, it seems what we want option 3, we need to experiment, let's reduce the burden on others, blah, blah, blah. I think the challenge we're having is that our public sphere is so diluted that when we participate in these discussions online, people want to argue technical solutions with you, whereas I feel like we should direct all our collective attention towards staff and council and get them to give us what we're all asking for. So a part of my challenge has been when I go out there and I post on Twitter, on Facebook, and I say, hey folks, I've made this map, and then here's where all the people are coming from. Honestly, I'd look at the enthusiasm for downtown in the city. And people will come downtown, and we need to make downtown. Forget about the streets. We're focusing on these 2 streets, but the whole point is we're bringing people to downtown. Now the goal is, now that people are downtown, how do we get them from those 2 streets to everywhere else in downtown? That's for the Guelph Business Association to figure out. That's for individual business. That's for Chamber of Commerce. All these folks to figure out. It's not up to you, Adam, and it's not up to me. And I don't know why people expect you and I to come up with this whole suite of solutions when all we're trying to do is to say, hey, guys, look at all these people coming to downtown. Wouldn't it be great if we found a way together on how we can make this work? And I think, in my 3-point summary, I said, a lot of people are coming to downtown, and that's fantastic. Some people have concerns, and those concerns are legitimate. I trust council to be able to weigh all of these things and come up with a compromise. And that, to me, I have a lot of trust in council. I don't agree with everything that they collectively make a decision on, but this is our democracy. These 12, 13 people have run in the city. They are channeling the voices of people that put them into that place.
Mm-hmm.
I choose to trust council.
Mm-hmm.
They have broken my trust occasionally, but I actively choose to cultivate that trust because that's the kind of decision-making system that we have, right? Like you and I, again, this is not a reflection on the conversation you and I have been having,
Right.
but in general, I think every time an issue like this comes up, we seem to relitigate these issues. Like people say, you're not for transit enough, or you don't care about accessibility, you don't care about this and that. Whereas what I want people to focus on is like, listen to what I'm saying,
Right.
and take your concerns, legitimate concerns, to people who actually have the authority to do something about it. Like my job as someone, I don't have a job, this is not my job. I just love the city. I love making maps. Like this is not your job. You love the city. You love, doing 800 different things you do for the city. It's not up to you or I to come up with this whole suite of solutions, right?
Right.
So that's where I think a lot of my frustration comes from. And to go back to like the article that you wrote about, whether or not like the mayor talking about this like calcifies people's decision making and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know how like the politics of all of this will play out. Like it's, again, I'm not a politician. I can't even vote in Canada, right? So we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
But I do think though that, I mean, the timeline of this is up to 2023, and it overlaps with the council election that's coming up next year.
Mm-hmm.
So like explicitly or implicitly, I think the decisions that this council makes, every decision council makes is, reflected back in how people choose to, re-elect councillors or that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that whether or not this is an election issue or not, I think the simple fact is that come next election, this will very much be on the agenda because the timelines of this overlap.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to be, so I don't know, again, I don't know exactly what the mayor said and stuff like that, but I think where I'm going with all of this is that ultimately, I think the choice here is pretty clear to me in my head, right? We need to prepare for the future,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to get things right.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, we have tried to get things right by applying technocratic solutions designed by experts and city staff. And I have a lot of respect for them, and they do fantastic work. But sometimes their best practice recommendations doesn't match the lived realities of people like us who use transit, who walk around downtown, that sort of stuff. In order for us to get better at doing that, we need to keep actively listening to people who are using transit in a new paradigm where some parts of downtown for some time in the week, for some portion of the year, are closed down.
Mm-hmm.
By doing that, we'll learn more about how people are actually using transit. We'll learn more about whether or not people are actually using transit to get to downtown, whether actually transit ends up feeding people, bringing people from 12 different corners in the city into downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And by learning that, I think we would be better off when we come back in 2023 to do, I don't know, it's car-free downtown, net zero downtown, whatever that ends up being, we'd be better off positioned then than we are now. Because if we let that opportunity go, and if we do option one, which is an ad hoc thing, and we close some streets some week, we don't, we already have data for that, right? We close the street, I forget what street it is, Quebec Street Mall, for the art thing. We closed the street for like I was going to say Raptors games. That'd be nice. No, the Storm games and stuff. We already know what that looks like, so there's nothing to learn from there. And we don't, again, this is the thing too, we don't talk about fairness when it comes to the closing that street. I've never heard anyone say, why are we closing Quebec Street? Why can't we close the other street? Why is that not fair? It's not fair because we're just used to it. This thing is new. Understandably, people are a little concerned. I'm inviting people to lean into that discomfort, and let's figure this out so that in 2023 we're all better positioned.
Well, I would also add too that you close down Quebec Street, you can go up Cork, you can go up McDonald, you can go up Carden. Closing Quebec doesn't hurt, and I think that's the key difference. one of the things I want to address that we haven't addressed yet is some of that more fundamental philosophical stuff, which is, and I don't know how much you went into it with your survey, but like how many people are driving downtown to go car free, right? And I think that's kind of like a more fundamental answer, or a more fundamental debate that has to be had.
Yeah.
That I think it gets buried in this, and I realize there are reasons why, as you articulated, people aren't taking transit now because of COVID. People don't want to get on overcrowded buses, etc. But transit has to be a part of any discussion, any like big future discussion about car free.
I agree.
And I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I got so mad at going to that Jennifer Keesman event last year. Is, you know, a room full of people applauding going car free, then leave the venue, even though it's within a 5-minute walk of 8 different bus stops, all getting in their car. And it's like, at some point you got to walk the walk. You address the politics of it too, and I think the politics is where things get screwed up. Because I don't know what's in Mayor Guthrie's head either, unless I ask him a question and he responds in the context of an interview. Even then, you know, you are getting someone giving you a stated answer. You're not knowing what's going on in there. But having said that, what I saw last week on social media was people blasting people on Facebook, Twitter, saying, this is such a great idea. Why aren't we doing it? And the response from the mayor and at least one other councillor was, you're absolutely right. We should be doing this. And those councillors that don't want to do this, something might be wrong there. And we need to make sure they change their minds. And it's like, I appreciate that in the back of the heads of some of these people that they may understand the issues that you and I have addressed today. But when you see that, just that Twitter blast, it immediately sets you as someone who is a skeptic on a back foot and making you think you are not being heard, right? And I mean, that's a fundamental fault of the system, the medium, yes. But there was too much of that and not enough of, like, if he had responded and said, yes, I am absolutely in favor of having a closed down dining district all season long, but there are logistical stuff we have to figure out, stay tuned. I don't think as many people would have a strong reaction to that. It's just the immediate, like, you are right. And if you are right and I am right, the people who do not agree with us are wrong. And I think, as we demonstrated today, this is not a right and wrong proposition. This is like we had a good time last summer. Can we make it so that more people have a good time, whether they are in the patio, on the patio or not, or if they're just going around the patio to get to work or wherever they're going? And it's just a matter of, there are issues that need to be addressed. We would like to address them. And at the end of the day, I'm not against the dining district. I would love that. I would love to close that down all summer.
Yeah.
But I like to make my transfer when I'm out on the bus too.
Yeah, and we talked about that. Right? So a couple of things. I mean, where I'm at is that, like, Twitter is not real life. You know,
no.
Facebook is not real life.
No.
I'm trying to stay off of Twitter, especially. And the cycles that you've identified, right, where people go and strident, and especially people on council go and stridently argue in favor of the stuff that they talk about. I've seen that play out time and time again on all angles of any issue. You know, we just came off of this big library discussion. I didn't say a word because I, like most people, have a very heterodox view of this thing. And trying to parse that out on social media is a lost cause. I had a couple of conversations with counselors. I told them what I value, what I wanted to see. I felt like I was heard. I was happy with that. I have received, blowback on several different things that I've talked about on social media, where people, accuse me of things, like. Honestly, man, it's very hurtful. People call me like, people call me ignorant. People tell me that I don't know anything about how Canada works. People also tell me that, some guy called me like a heartless conservative idiot. And I'd like to think that I'm like, where did that even come from, man? Like, so I think the medium lends itself to a certain, we lose a lot through nonverbal communication and it also being like that. What I will tell you is that if we focused on just like, I think I've read what Cam said in, I think, an article that Graham Norton did, your colleague at Guelph Mercury did. And I've seen him like post on in his blog, on his Facebook, where he gets the opportunity to, go more deeper. I think to me, he's always sounded like he's been for the compromise in option 3. Like he's very vocally been like, look, I understand, transit needs to be figured out. Let's put option 3 on the table. Let's all work together. Let's all find a compromise. And I think that's the policy statement. And I think maybe that's the conversations that are happening behind the scenes. I don't know. On social media, like, do we take that as, I don't know, right? Like, isn't that how, like, how does someone like me come out and show support for something and just say, hey, here's what I vocally support. You guys figure it out, right? Because that's not the place for, like, again, social media is not, I feel like it's not the place for these nuanced, like, technical discussions. To be say, I am vocally in support of this. And I think social media is okay for being vocally in favor of something like that. And if you want nuance, maybe you should dig a little deeper into what a counselor or an individual is saying on their blog or in their prepared statements. And that's how I've kind of separated it. Social media is your political activity where you're saying, man, I really want to get this done. And I think that's fine. But in his communications through longer channels of communication, I think he's been, my reading of it at least, has been that he's been in favor of option 3. So again, I'm not here to, I don't know, like defend Cam or something like that. But that's what I'm hearing from him, right? So I've been able to compartmentalize that and just like ignore all the nasty stuff that just goes on Twitter. But I do agree with you in the sense that over time, the discourse, this collective discourse that we're having is unhealthy for our mental health, for our strength as a community, and for that sort of thing. What we need more of is conversations like this. Maybe people are having this behind the doors, we don't know. So I think, so again, that's the thing. And I will also say that, what you've identified with what Cam or some of the counselors are doing, I've seen this sort of activity from practically everyone who's been on social media, including some of the other counselors. But over time, I've come to compartmentalize that and really respect the work that they're doing and trust them as a unit, put some trust in them as individuals. Everyone that I've reached out privately has, without an exception, made time for me, even though I don't live in their wards, that sort of thing. And so they, as individuals and they as counselors, I think are much bigger and better than the facade and the facsimile that we see on social media. And I think we all need to remember that.
I think that's fair. And I think, though, that the reflex on social media is to go to the corners. Yep. And I think that, and I mean, this is true to a certain extent when you look at the comments on Guelph Today or something like that. It's everybody goes to their corner. It's a reflex, and I think that our politicians need to realize that when your arm is reflexive moving that way, I don't need someone to push you in that way too. It just, I guess not to tell people how to do their jobs, because I think everything you said is right. It's just that people want to feel heard. And that's one of the things that drove me to take more of an active role in this debate than I normally like to, is that there was an aspect to the debate that I feel wasn't being heard. And that the entire thing about the district last summer was it was shiny, happy people, not holding hands because we were physically distant, but and and not necessarily smiling because we were all wearing masks. So how do you know? But the idea is that it was 100% positive, 0% negative. Everyone loved it. And that is not the universal point of view. And if we are to proceed going forward, it needs to be with an understanding that that was the case, and not to reflexively go to the thing that is popular on social media, which I felt like the dining district was, because I think that was how a lot of people experienced it as well. Is
No,
through the hashtag. Yeah,
I think you're right. And I think in addition to that, I think there's also room for people to say the dining district was extremely popular.
mm-hmm.
And it's okay if people just say that, because I don't think it's on anyone to always think of the big picture, right? We don't have to. Like, we're just people who love the city. We love certain parts of the city. You love the dining district. Just say you're the dining district. I'm okay with that. And if you say, I hated the dining district, because I had these concerns, man, that's amazing. Wow. I would not have thought of that. If you're telling me that, great, buddy. You don't have to convince me. You go talk to your counselor, work with them, right? Let's do this thing. What we don't have to do is to keep rehashing this over and over and over again.
Yeah.
On social media.
Yeah.
Rather focus our attentions on getting involved in the process. You don't have to go to stakeholder committees and stuff like that, but just pick up the phone. Actually, one of the things I'm working on now is a map of our city wards. You click on the ward, it'll show you 12 different ways to contact your counselor. And it was scheduled to go out like a couple of weeks ago, but I pulled it because I thought maybe now people are maybe let the temperature come down a little bit, right? And you reach out to them and express them your concern, and let's work this out. That's how politics is played. That's how policy is made. I wouldn't extrapolate too much based on what either individual counselors say or people say on social media, because despite what many individual counselors have said on multiple issues on social media, when I've reached out to them, they've been nothing but fantastic with me. They've been nothing but like more heterodox in their views. They actually kind of see what I'm saying. I see what they're saying. I'd encourage people to have those conversations offline, and just what you see on social media is a bastardized, mutated version of whatever you think the other person is saying. So when you read what someone says, this is what I do, right? When I read when something says, what I'm trying to do is, what if my best friend had said that? How would I react? And if someone says something really positive about me, I'm like, what if someone hates me when they said that? It just kind of brings me to the middle, helps me deal with it better, but I'm not good at it. And that's why I stay off of the thing. So again, sorry, not to take too long about this, but hour and 80 minutes later, but on this one note, I think that Cam has been very supportive of. To me, it seems like option 3 is where his head is at. I wish that we could rally around option 3. I think option 1 is not going to be very helpful either for this summer or for 2023. It doesn't bring people to downtown. It doesn't make us feel like we belong. Yes, one-off events, we can do jazz festival and stuff like that, and that'll be great. But option 3 will get us going this summer. We will learn more, and then we will be set for 2023.
Right. What I would add to that too, and to get to your other point about beating the dead horse, my concern is going into that last council meeting of the month is that you're going to get 30 people delegating, and it's going to be option 2 or option nil, and to get to the core of what you were saying, what I would like and what I would hope is we can talk about compromise at the meeting instead of talking about, like, instead of dressing all the points were made at the committee, right? You had businesses talking about what was great about it. You had people like me talking about transit concerns. You had people talking about, like, I saw increased traffic in my neighborhood, which wasn't great. I had accessibility concerns. I had fairness concerns, on and on and on. we've heard all the points. What I would like, and I don't always get what I like, is is that we have delegations sort of geared to the idea of how do we move forward and compromise. Would as a business, would you be okay with weekend only? As a transit user, would you be okay with weekend only? If you're not okay, what would you be okay with in terms of opening or closing the district? It just, I want to go back to your point. What I would like to see is those delegations be about solutions instead of about rehashing the problems.
I love it. Okay, so this is fantastic, right? Because this is action items for you and I. Let's launch Operation Option 3.
Before we launch Operation Option 3, I'd like to launch Operation Find a Better Name.
We got to launch Operation Name Change Committee first, but no. Okay,
that's right.
So you and I have a shared goal now. Our shared goal is to get people not to rehash the old things, because we've already been there, done that. The committee has gone through this deliberations. The staff has done its thing. When people show up to delegate, give council a clear signal. Let's compromise. Let's work on solutions. Option 3.
Fair. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, excellent. So so what's the name then?
We'll have to take it offline.
Okay.
I'll workshop some stuff and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but man, I'm 100% support with you. Like I'll come crawling back to Twitter to launch, soon to be renamed Operation Option 3. I can't even get it. Yeah, I can see why you want the name to be changed. So let's get that out. I think I saw an op-ed today from our friend Mike Darman. He's speaking from a pedestrianized cycling perspective. He's also for Option 3. So I think honestly, again, our council, I have a lot of trust in them. I think they will hear us a strong signal of compromise, and let's get it done. Option 3.
All right. We'll end the video there then, and hopefully we can make something good happen in the next couple of weeks. So, yes, Abhi, good chat, and we'll see what happens. But thanks for hopping on the Zoom.
Hey man, thanks for doing this, man. This has been fantastic. We should do this more often.
We should do this more often.